Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Over the years in Formula 1, we've seen a few contract disputes between drivers and teams, with the Oscar Piastri situation between Alpine and McLaren being the most recent, and in earlier years we've seen ones such as Jenson Button at BAR and Williams. However, disputes similar to this with two teams fighting over the same driver have been going on long before that, and I wanted to briefly share one of the earlier disputes in the World Championship era that had an interesting ending. Before getting into it though, if you enjoyed the video, then please give it a like and share the video, and if you want to see more similar content, then you can subscribe to the channel. So, the players in this dispute were Mike Hawthorne, Ferrari, and Maserati in 1956, but to begin we have to start off at the beginning of the year when Hawthorne signed for neither of these teams. Instead, he signed for BRM as their number one driver. The deal was not signed long before the season opener in Argentina, so Hawthorne was a late entry for that race, but instead of competing in a BRM car, the team entered him in Maserati, which he would drive to a third-place finish. BRM then entered their own cars for both Hawthorne and teammate Tony Brooks at the next race at Monaco, but this is when things would start to go wrong. Hawthorne qualified 10th and Brooks 13th, but the team was suffering from issues with the brakes as well as just being off the pace, and instead of racing they decided to withdraw both of their cars. With the next race in Belgium less than a month away, BRM withdrew again in the weeks leading up to the race. Since this happened before the race though, BRM released Hawthorne from his contract for that weekend, which allowed him to pursue a ride with another make for the race. Reports stated that he agreed to drive for Maserati for the weekend, and when he showed up it looked like everything was going to be fine. Back then there wasn't a specific qualifying session, and your best time from any of the practice sessions throughout the weekend would be the time used to determine where you started on the grid. The track opened on Thursday, but Hawthorne was not able to set a time until the next day. The frontrunners had near-perfect track conditions toward the end of the day, but Friday was pretty much a washout, giving Hawthorne no hope of setting a competitive time. By the end of the day, his best time was 4 minutes 48.9 seconds, which was nearly 40 seconds off the best time Juan Manuel Fangio had set the day before, and still about 12 seconds off the best time Fangio set that day, as Hawthorne was not able to get comfortable with the car. By the time the final day of practice on Saturday had come around, conditions were once again pretty good, meaning Hawthorne would surely improve on his time, but once again he was not there to do so. Instead, he had gone home. As it turned out, Ferrari had claimed that Hawthorne was supposed to be driving for them that weekend. Now, I can't find the details to make it 100% clear how this worked out, but from what I can gather, it appears that he offered both teams to drive for them, but somewhere along the line, a letter between him and Ferrari got lost, so he only got a reply from Maserati and therefore thought they were the only ones that wanted his services. Ferrari had a car waiting for him, which was car number 6 for the weekend, but seeing Hawthorne driving for a rival team caused Ferrari to feel that they had been wronged. Enzo Ferrari threatened to get the FIA involved to discipline Hawthorne, but instead of letting this be solved between the two teams, Hawthorne thought of a different solution. Instead, he packed up and went home and drove for neither of the teams. Now knowing that Hawthorne would not be driving, Ferrari offered the car they had prepared him to Belgian driver Paul Freire, and on the Saturday practice session he set a time that would place him 8th on the grid, while Maserati did not replace Hawthorne for the rest of the weekend. Hawthorne's wet time on Friday ended up being good enough for 13th on the grid of the 16 drivers that qualified, but obviously he wouldn't start the race from there. Freire, meanwhile, responded with what just may be the best drive of his life. He battled with the Maserati of Jean Behra for most of the race, until Behra ran into troubles late and Freire came home in second place for what was his only career podium in what would turn out to be his final World Championship race. In the aftermath, feelings must not have been too bad between Hawthorne and Ferrari, as just a few weeks later Hawthorne was entered to drive a sports car race at Monza in a Lotus, but the car was withdrawn late and Ferrari stepped in to offer him a seat to share with Peter Collins. The pair then won the race together. Hawthorne would then switch to Ferrari in Formula 1 full-time in 1957, finishing 4th in the championship, and then won the championship with Ferrari in 1958, becoming the first British world champion, and then retired. As far as Formula 1 in 1956, BRM again did not compete at the race after Belgium and France and allowed Hawthorne to find another ride, and this time he signed for Vanwall for the race. There wasn't any controversy this time, but Hawthorne gave up his car during the race to Vanwall teammate for the weekend Harry Schell, who had retired after 11 laps. Schell then went on to put a brilliant drive and was challenging Fangio for the lead around halfway through the race, but then the car ran into engine troubles. BRM finally showed up again at the British Grand Prix with Hawthorne driving, and he actually led early before retiring, and those would be the final World Championship races both BRM and Hawthorne would compete in 1956. Well, I know that was a brief story, but one I found interesting nonetheless, with Hawthorne opting to drive for neither of the teams and go home instead of letting them fight over his services. Let me know if you enjoyed the video, and perhaps if you'd like to see more of these smaller stories in the future. Thanks for watching.